right. Hello. Welcome to the Academic Canuck podcast. Thank you for joining me today. It's springtime in Canada. Yeah, it's getting nice out. Nice weather. Usually like to go out for walks when it's not raining, of course. It's not raining today. Maybe I'll go out for a little walk later after I'm done this. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you like the content that I'm putting out. Ep.7 today, and we're going to be talking about interdisciplinarity. I'm excited for this episode because interdisciplinarity is my research interest inside of academia. I actually wrote a book about interdisciplinarity called The Interdisciplinarity Reformation, a reflection of learning, life, and society. I also published my dissertation called Reviewing the Interdisciplinarity of Professors at Colleges and Universities Globally through a meta-analysis of current literature. I am also in the midst of another research topic with a colleague of mine called Towards an Open Classroom, the Effectiveness of OERs on Deep and Interdisciplinary Learning in a Higher Education Classroom. And currently, I would say in the past month or so, I've started to expand a little bit, and I am working on another paper. I'm looking to maybe get some co-authors for it, called Critiquing Systemic Racism in Higher Education Through Nomological Networks and Interdisciplinarity, a Mixed Method Inquiry. So I'm looking to use a systematic literature review and build to a parametric analysis with that, which hopefully I can get off the ground. I got a lot on the plate right now, so hopefully it's something I can do in the future. All right, so let me just get set up here a little bit. So this topic is something that not only do I find important, but it's a key to understanding how we learn within society. And how we grow our learning through pragmatic, rational, and justified ways. This podcast, essentially, this episode of it, will discuss what interdisciplinary is and the benefits into 4 parts. So it may be a lengthy one, but hopefully beneficial. The first part is what is interdisciplinarity? Essentially, the history and its epistemological understanding. Second, we're going to look at, what does or who is a part of interdisciplinarity? For example, its impact on education, history, and society, especially. And third, where is it used, so to speak? Where is interdisciplinarity used? We're going to maybe look at it in economics, politics, law, art and culture, etc. And last but not least, when is interdisciplinarity used, such as in life, relationships, and of course, learning. So without further ado, let's get started here. So first things first is, what is interdisciplinarity? And when we talk about what it is, we have to look at the history of interdisciplinarity first. I would say we can trace interdisciplinarity all the way back to Greek antiquity. Much like most things, you can translate, or you could bring it all the way back to the philosophers during Greek antiquity. But one can go even a little bit further with interdisciplinarity, and we can discuss the tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh, when it stated that a good life is the balance of many different factors such as food, shelter, work, and faith, and how they commingle with one another. That was, of course, I'm paraphrasing, but that is one of the messages that Gilgamesh had at the end of his journey in that epic. We can even go even further back, as early as, hominids who structured a society based on interdisciplinarity of connected knowledge, through many things such as tool making or battling with other tribes, all connected functions for this express consent of advancing the species and advancing life. So I guess what I see interdisciplinarity as in terms of its history, I make points that argue against the concepts written about it in many of the books of the 70s, that interdisciplinarity is this phenomenon that is found in labs and offices of college professors doing research, and that's only where it's found. I argue no to that. I reject that notion. I challenge it that this is a precedent that is set psychologically, anthropologically, and I would say biologically as well. And it's throughout our history as humans. I make that claim in my meta-analysis on interdisciplinarity, actually, from studying professors, given that this is not just proliferated in classrooms and research facilities inside of American academia, but it's proliferated in learning and knowledge globally through these professors. So I think that's where I come about finding my confirmation, which concludes that this is an innate action rather than a phenomenon of scholarship. So moving on from that, I would say a way that you can describe it, less of a research methodology and more of an epistemology, which this is the third episode in a row I'm describing epistemology, which, as we know, of course, is a way of knowing, or is the origin of knowledge. So when we talk about epistemology, I guess one conclusion that you can draw to an interdisciplinarity in epistemology comes from the understanding of foundational and anti-foundational truth or knowledge. Insofar that anti-foundational truth is there, it's present, but it is, what's the word I can use? It is governed in a way by this foundational concept of objective truth and reality. Thus, interdisciplinarity got its start through this, I would say. I would say a lot of academics in the past would use this Marxian postmodern presence of collective ideas and subjective truth to describe interdisciplinarity. That's especially when it was a kind of seen as a methodology. Now, the epistemology of interdisciplinarity acts as the foundation of truth through empiricism towards building towards an objective truth reflecting the Enlightenment thinkers. You can look back to Locke, Hume, Bacon, etc., etc. I would say from this, to summarize, interdisciplinarity is the natural and innate ability to connect and combine forms of knowledge towards objective truth. To get a little bit more on that, I recommend going back to episode 5 where I talk about C.I. Lewis to get a deeper sense of this combined forms of knowledge towards objective truth in his analysis. Okay. What else about interdisciplinarity? I mean, who does interdisciplinarity essentially? Where is it found, I guess, so to speak? Well, let's look at my field, interdisciplinarity in education. We see different forms of connected knowledge within how we learn, of course. Remember your schooling from back in the day that you had a multitude of classes. Science, civics, music, math, whatever. Essentially, you have to look more outwardly when talking about education to see the interdisciplinarity picture, such as music teaches you how to read the sheets and play the instrument. Math shows you how to use numbers and solve problems. Civics shows you about our laws and the structure of our society, etc., etc. And the school is where all these subjects take place and form the interdisciplinary human you become. i.e., one who solves problems, one who can appreciate certain art forms at the same time appreciating our society and following the law. So that's what school is supposed to do. That is the interdisciplinary school. It's supposed to take all those subjects, take everything you learn from those subjects, and that forms you into the social human that you will become, all while using your natural and innate ability of making connections and knowledge. So even that is kind of a meta interdisciplinarity in terms of using your natural and innate abilities to think and combining them with your social abilities. Okay, so I mean, let's touch on this a little bit. So yeah, it can take this meta understanding, so to speak, of yes, the school itself is a physical place. It is four walls, it is windows, it is a building with a roof on it, where these certain subjects are held. But the school is also this theoretical place that uses connected knowledge to build leaders and society of tomorrow. So that's an important way to look at the interdisciplinary school, is that it is a physical space, but it's also a theoretical space as well. And when you can look at it as both, it actually makes it quite profound. You know, that is why when I hear about schools in the news and some of the teaching that's going on, that's why these individualized and narrow concepts do not fit, I would say, within the structure of the school. For example, religion. And this is not to point out any one religion. This goes for any religion. I would say really needs not to be a framework for a school of interdisciplinarity, given its physical and theoretical constraints, I would say, on education. And like I said, when I say religion, I don't just mean like Catholic and Judeo-Christian. I also mean this modern concept of like critical theory, which I see as a religion, or critical race theory, critical pedagogy, etc. Because although they have the word critical in it, which may denote a certain sense of critiquing and exploratory understanding about race or whatever, it really is vacuous and rigid based on the modeling of the theory and what it allows for, in terms of its criticism, which is next to zero. This is just what I've been seeing, especially with some of the curricula that's coming out of schools in the United States that are using this critical race theory methodology or lens, so to speak. And of course that is wrong and works against the foundation of the school. And it works against the foundation of the learning, and thus I call it anti-interdisciplinarity. So if I say I want schools to be interdisciplinarity, like they're naturally intended to be and they should be, things that work in this vacuous way with narrow concepts, have it be a certain religion, have it be just a certain ideological structure on a subject, it is, I would say, it's not welcome within education, thus is anti-interdisciplinarity. When we look at the history, I guess, I mean, this going back to Greek antiquity, this is shown in the philosophers of Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, that were against the rigidity of royal palatial states in Greece, along with the orators during Rome, such as Cicero, Boethius, Quintilian, advocated for the outwardly advancement of learning, opposed to the Roman rigidity. I mean, none other example of interdisciplinarity as growth of, in the Renaissance and Enlightenment areas out of the rigidity of the medieval Dark Ages. That was probably the biggest example of interdisciplinarity. In my book that I mentioned, I see Renaissance and Enlightenment as this immune response to the darkness of the medieval era and the religious zealotry and the pain that was caused, especially by these fiefdoms and these royals and these bishops, that clear class divide, and the Enlightenment and Renaissance from an idea of interdisciplinary expansion of knowledge kind of made the shift. It was a revolution and an antidote to that stifled way of learning, especially in the medieval era. I guess one thing to talk about is interdisciplinarity in society. It is reflected in ways going back to, we can look back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, that our life is not just our knowledge we attain, but how we use it. In being a good father or mother or husband or wife, employer, employee, a citizen, it becomes the foundational understanding of how we organize everything, which I find so profound, I would say, and as a basis for deep understanding on why learning is important and why we use it. I had another thing to say. You know what? I'll leave it. Let's. I kind of want to. Maybe actually, I'm just thinking, talking about art and discussing society, or I might talk about art and why interdisciplinarity is used. I think, okay, I'll wait. Let me first get into a concept of economics with, why interdisciplinarity is used. The main reason why it is used to find why interdisciplinarity is used is to find answers and solutions to complex problems. For example, economics. Now, when we talk about economics, it is not the same as the economy. Although economic thinking informs how an economy will run, they are not, I would say, mutually exclusive. So the economy is a system, of course, of how the state manages its funds and like GDP, all that stuff, all that boring stuff or interesting stuff, depending on who you are. But economics is the system of thinking that deals with scarcity of products, either practical or theoretical, is how I would describe it. So not only how you deal with scarcity of money and products, but how you deal with scarcity in your time with loved ones, family, friendships, etc. So not only the 100,000 you have in the bank account in terms of money, but how do you manage the, I think the estimate is 690,000 hours in human life. How do you manage that time? Okay. When which you think of it like that, I always hated this concept. And I know in my last podcast, I said I tried my best not to discuss too much about COVID, but I always hated this COVID narrative of, you just care about economics over lives. Well, economics are lives. Very profoundly, economics are lives. I worry most that this time, especially with COVID winding down, that the people who were scared in 2020 are realizing now this effect of what 2020 did on their wasted time with COVID and the fear around it, because 692,000 life hours are a sunk cost, which means you don't get those hours back. So it really introduces a concept of economic thinking relating to interdisciplinarity and interdisciplinary concepts outside of money, more theoretical understanding towards life and how you live. I mean, this kind of goes, we're such a politically divided culture right now, especially. So I guess you can connect the economics of life to the economics of politics, or just interdisciplinarity politics. I mean, I guess when we look at it that way, it's the ability to not stay vacuous in one party. I would say, for example, I currently dislike leadership across the board right now in my province and in my country. Thus, I look at it as I plan to vote maybe Liberal independent for my provincial election against the Conservative government, and vote Conservative for the federal election. This is not against any law, okay? It's not a crime to do that. I think interdisciplinarity provides the best way to look at policies and not be beholden to any political party, which might be very helpful to a lot of voters in some places, especially with more elections coming up in the United States and in Canada here. I mean, you could look at it as, if I were an American, as of right now, I do not like the Democrat Party in the United States, and would likely vote Republican across the board if an election was available. If the Republican Party goes too overboard on an issue such as religion or social values, I may even shift to Democrat. I don't know, but the fact is this is allowed. And this creates a check on your leaders. It creates a check on your government, which was the whole reason why James Madison wrote the Federalist Papers 51 and to create the 3 separate branches of government, is to be a check and balance on all those branches of government. Okay? So the reason, when we talk about interdisciplinarity in politics, it's the freedom inside politics to choose what works best either for you or for your family in terms of voting. Going back to a tweet, I mentioned this tweet that I sent to Bridget Fedesi. I think she stole it for her own in one of her podcasts, but I don't care. I love her work, so I'll allow it. But I said, don't be blue or red, be purple and be dangerous at the polls. And that's important because when you're purple, you're not beholden to either Democrat or Republican. You're a swing voter. Your vote is highly influential towards an election. And dare I say that the politicians who know their Republican voters, they really don't care about the Republican voters because or Democrat voters because they already got them in the bag. They try and get the most purple voters, the most swing voters in order for them to win an election. So really think of that and have yourself be an effective voter, not a party voter. We can go on, and this kind of segues into law a little bit. It is interesting because I have these insightful conversations with my best friends about topics. These guys are really smart and discuss, things like natural rights and laws. We disagree on some topics, especially when relating to natural rights and laws, but we agree on some, and I see personally natural rights as a foundational principle found in nature on how we live our life. This goes back to natural law being foundational, encompassing degrees of morality, i.e. moral and immoral actions, which is anti-foundational in our system. So it's a governing concept. And I also see my friend's side, too, as, they argue they're for an objective truth in that sense, but do not constitute like a natural law or a right to be foundational found in nature, given it's only a construct of a state to provide these natural laws. And I see that side too. So I think the concept of law and politics is really interesting to discuss, especially from an interdisciplinarity framework, because you can get a lot of different ideas. So I would say we still have these interesting discussions on this when we come to conclusions, at times we disagree. And again, interdisciplinarity is not necessarily being victorious in wins or losses in debate, that sort of thing. Rather, it's about coming to a solution in some form of cohesive answer to a complex problem. Again, it's all about solving complex problem and providing answers to complex questions. That is the crux of interdisciplinarity. And of course, answers can change and it can be refined if necessary. So now I guess what I'll do is I'll talk about, I was going to talk about art, but let's talk about art and culture both. I think it's clear about art and culture that the different forms of art are indeed different and perceived in different ways. I don't think there's any argument out there with that. Personally, I love Quentin Tarantino and hate Lord of the Rings. All the Lord of the Rings fans are probably going to hate me now. I don't care. There may be someone out there who hates the art of Quentin Tarantino and loves Lord of the Rings. God love you. Go ahead. That type of understanding is there, but, ultimately it's those type of squabbles are menial, but they have to be accepted. Some people have different tastes in art. More of that, art and culture is the ultimate wild card, I would say, for individuality, to think of it in an interdisciplinarity way. Which is why art and culture can only survive in certain societies, I would say. It's the reason that strange art forms like Dadaism, and that's spelled Dadaism, or postmodern art would only be founded in free and liberal countries like the United States, because that type of freedom and that type of liberalization makes way for new and strange different understandings on art and culture that are accepted. I mean, in terms of art forms, one can look at today and be upset either with the Dr. Seuss and the canceled books, or that certain movies do not have enough black representation, hindering an art form. The art I am most worried about right now, and this is serious, is losing the art of debate. That is a sad one because there is less and less of it being allowed in our public discourse. I mean, on a positive note, I can say I feel it changing a little bit more, especially a lot of people coming out and talking about, kind of this woke cancel culture being toxic within our system, but not at a pace that I would like, especially during a lot of people's professionals' career at this moment. The art of debate is needed, and you should not be hindered in any way when engaging in debate. For example, I should be able to show you using clear and effective data, and this is a hot button topic, that African Americans commit more hate crimes on Asian Americans than any other race. That is a statistical fact, and I should be able to use that fact comfortably. You are allowed in a debate to counter with a critical race theory lens and say that this is a manifestation of white supremacy, or well, I actually don't prefer you use the term white supremacy because I think that means a serious thing that is reprehensible, that is not present, but you can say of a white-based society, or a form of colonization, but the data should not be ignored. And then I would present that in a debate, and then people can decide whether, the data is more important or the social function and the manifestation from a critical race theory lens is more important. I mean, this is something I hope we return to. I hope it's something we really get back to because it's beneficial for us all. Another area of discussion, I guess, the final one that I'll talk about is when is interdisciplinarity used, and the concept that it's used in life, in relationships, and learning. And it goes to, I created this epistemic foundation using interdisciplinarity in 10 distinct guidelines in my book, the Interdisciplinarity Reformation. I would like to read you an excerpt from that book to just outline what I had and to shape this epistemic contribution. We are on the precipice of reformation with our learning, life, and society, and only we can change the course of what history will say about our path towards an epistemic understanding about our world. At this point, it is relevant to summarize 10 lessons of interdisciplinarity that will help guide you into the future for knowledge and epistemological attainment. 1. Interdisciplinarity is inherent, logical, and foundational to humans. 2. Interdisciplinarity can provide answers to questions outside of disciplinary realms. 3. Foundational knowledge governs anti-foundational principles. 4. Systematic oppression of knowledge and epistemology, SOAK, is present in our institutions. They must be called out and remedied. 5. Interdisciplinarity is quantifiable, providing a sense of foundational knowledge towards a previous phenomenon. 6. Continuous research can be done effectively with interdisciplinarity, so long as the goal is to continue to find answers. 7. Enlightenment-era principles of logic, reason, liberty, and scientific discovery must be viewed as a path to knowledge. 8. Opposing ideals are welcome only if they enhance logic and reason. 9. Dogmatic principles outside of the logic and reason create a religiosity, installing a false prophet narrative around knowledge which is dangerous and cannot continue. 10. Interdisciplinarity is a tool that can be used by an individual to enhance their capabilities in finding knowledge. In summation, I guess what I can say about interdisciplinarity is that it's a tool to be used for learning. It is a shield to be used for certain toxic ideas. It can prevent you from either a vacuousness of knowledge and arrogance with knowledge. It can help you be grounded with how you learn. I connected the use of interdisciplinarity to nomological networks mentioned by Gad Saad, who describes his nomological networks as just this web of evidence and information. So when a problem is provided, you can attack it from multiple different areas. And that's what interdisciplinarity can provide as well. It's this collection of knowledge that can be used to answer these questions and to stifle kind of, I would say, bad ideas, to also reiterate what Gad Saad said in his book, The Parasitic Mind. But ultimately, it's the progress that it provides humans to build towards an enhanced society and an enhanced life. That's the ultimate message, I would say, that interdisciplinarity offers. So, okay, I'm at around, let's see here, close to 32 minutes, 31 and a half minutes, so to speak. So let's go into watching and reading now. I am still reading Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianov and Jonathan Haidt. It's great so far. Watching, I haven't seen this movie since it came out in theaters, but I'm going to watch it again. It's called The Lighthouse, with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, directed by Robert Eggers. That was quite the experience when I first watched that film, and I can't wait to watch it again. A classic tale of a carrion abundance, I'll say. That's all I'll say about it, especially if you haven't watched it yet. So if you get a chance, go watch that. All right. Again, thank you for listening to this podcast. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on all the social media platforms. Well, not all of them, just Facebook and Twitter. Type in Academic Canuck, and I'm sure you can find me. Okay, again, thank you very much. Have a great day. Academic Canuck, signing off.